Okay, I think we should start now. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ahmed Yusuf, and I am the current president of the UT Muslim Student Association. I would like to welcome you all to this lecture, which will be given by our guest lecturer, Imam Fadel Soliman. And I would like also to welcome him for accepting our invitation to give this lecture despite his very tight schedule. So I will give an introduction in around 10 minutes about why we thought that this lecture is important. And then I will give the floor to Imam Fadel to give his lecture in around 45 minutes, and then a question and answer session will be given. So everyone in the audience can ask Imam Fadel directly his questions about the lecture or any general question that he had in mind. So we can all agree that the advancement of technology in communication and transportation made the world look like a small village. And actually nowadays people of different nationalities and different backgrounds, different beliefs are communicating and interacting with each other more than ever. In the past, the only ways for people of different cultures to interact with each other is either by trading or by going to war. Nowadays, it's quite different. We can see, for example, here in the University of Twenet, according to a report issued by the university in 2014, around 15% of the students, bachelors and masters, are non-Dutch ones, and 22% of the UT staff are also international. And not only the UT, for example, a university called New School University in New York has 29% of its students as internationals, almost 1/3. Internationalization becomes more clear in case of industry, in particular the multinational companies. According to a report by BusinessInsider.com in 2011, the American multinational retail corporation Walmart stores have a revenue that exceeded the entire GDP of Norway. So this corporate can actually be thought as a country of its own. This corporate has stores in 27 countries, according to Wikipedia, and as a result, employees from different countries having different cultures and backgrounds have to work together for the success of their corporate each day, communicating each day with each other, and even traveling frequently to others' office locations and to customers in different countries where they have to interact frequently with people of different culture than their own. And those are not only the situations that people would get in contact nowadays with others from different nationalities and cultures. Internet was introduced last century, and we have seen an exploding number of internet users in the past 15 years. An estimate of 39% of the world population are actually internet users in 2013, compared to only 2% in 1997. And we all here use internet daily, and we can see how easily it can connect us with others in different places of the world. And as a result, we have seen people who have started online businesses and working with people from other countries over the internet, having meetings over Skype and sharing documents in the cloud. Also, we have seen websites like Coursera and Udemy offering many online courses where thousands of students from all around the world are enrolled in, forming teams and solving assignments and studying together. So what I'm trying to say is that we are actually living in a world where people from different cultural backgrounds and different beliefs are continuously getting closer to each other, studying, working, and interacting with each other despite their different backgrounds. And that is what is called globalization, and it's an increasing trend, and it will continue to increase. And it will continue to increase in the future as we continue to interact and communicate with each other. However, our cultural differences will still be there. Different beliefs will still be there. People will be closer, but not similar. And as this is useful, for example, in business, in getting different perspectives on an issue based on different backgrounds that the co-workers came from, however, sometimes problems may arise because of those differences. And one common reason of that is because of misconceptions that people have about others' cultures and beliefs. I'll give 2 examples of such misconceptions and then I will conclude my talk. Last Monday, the independent British newspaper published a report on a female German professor who rejected a male student from India seeking an internship with her. And she stated in her email to the student that the reason of her rejection was because India has rape problems. And she added, "I have many female friends in my group, so I think this attitude is something that I cannot support." Then the student replied back that she is overly generalizing. Then she replied with, "I fully agree that this is a generalization and may not be applied to individuals. However, it is unbelievable that the Indian society is not able to solve this problem for many years from now." And she added that the rejection of male Indian students for these reasons was a practice carried out by many female professors in Germany. So it's not actually only her. So many professors in Germany think the same. So in the end, that Indian student didn't get the internship because this professor and many professors in Germany had the idea that Indians are rapists. India has around 1.2 billion inhabitants, and according to Wikipedia, around 25,000 rape cases were reported in India in 2012. That's around 0.002% of the population, if we assume 1 rapist per rape crime. And according also to Wikipedia, India is classified as one of the countries with the lowest per capita rates of rape. Although this may not be accurate because it's thought that the majority of rape crimes goes unreported, however, that tells us that the incidents that came into public and went all over the media are as not much as most of the people think. And rape crimes rates in India might not be as high as this German professor and her colleagues might have expected. On the other hand, and in the same report in The Independent, it says that Germany has the 43rd highest proportionate rate of rape in the world, and Sweden comes 6th. Which might tell us that not only India has this problem, and the German professor should consider not accepting Swedish students as well. The second example of misconceptions is actually a personal one, so it happened to me. My wife wears veil, or hijab, to cover her hair following the Islamic teaching. And my wife is a very friendly person, and she makes friends very fast. And several times, when she starts to know a new European friend, and they start to get to know each other well, she is asked, "Does your husband force you to wear this headscarf?" And of course, I have never forced my wife to do anything, so she simply replies back by no, and she starts to explain that it's her own will to wear like this, and that she started wearing it long before we get married. And at one time, my wife came to me angry and complaining about being asked this question several times, and she told me, "Why do you think that I don't have any personality and I don't own my own will?" For me, that was funny, actually, because they thought I forced my wife to wear certain clothes. Actually, my wife is the one who forces me to wear certain clothes. However, one day I knew from another Muslim living in Europe that when his wife and daughters decided to wear headscarves, a lot of people thought that he actually forced them to do it. And many problems happened to him because of that. Then suddenly I was hit by this idea, as there is a huge misconception regarding this. Each time I go out with my wife, or go shopping, etc., I will be pictured as the oppressing Middle Eastern man who forces his wife to wear a headscarf. And that may change how people deal with me, and actually that may cause me problems. Not only that, but maybe this picture that I'm an oppressing man be in some of my co-workers' mind about me. And that may cause me problems. So, in conclusion, that's why we think that this lecture is of a great importance. as it will clarify to the audience one of the misconceptions that Europeans have about Islam. We believe that in a world where people are getting closer, in order to guarantee less conflicts between different beliefs and cultures, people should understand others' beliefs and cultures, and misconceptions should be clarified and discussed. And that's actually why we do believe that Imam Fadel Soliman was the best choice of a guest speaker for our lecture. Imam Fadel has been very active in clarifying misconceptions about Islam for years. You can just try to search his name on YouTube and you will find a very rich set of lectures and videos on such topics. And in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo horrific crime, the misconception about freedom of speech came to light again. That's why we invited Imam Soliman, who addressed the Danish journalists in Copenhagen in 2006 during the cartoon crisis to talk to you today. And the title of his talk will be, When Can Freedom of Speech Be Limitless in Islam? Imam Fadel is the director of Bridges Foundation. He is a member of the International Union of Muslim Scholars, a filmmaker who made 3 main documentaries about Islam. One of them is translated to 31 languages. The host of the weekly Islamic TV show in Channel 30 of the Washington metropolitan area, and the weekly American radio show Let the Quran Speak between 2000 and 2005. And the Muslim chaplain of the American University in Washington, D.C., also between 2000 and 2005. Please allow me to welcome him here with us and thank him for his time to give this lecture.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum is the Muslim greeting, means peace be upon you. Let me reintroduce myself to you. That was actually a little bit of an exaggeration. And the important thing about me, he did not mention. My name is Fadel Soliman. I am Egyptian. I am 49, even though I look 69. I am the director of Bridges Foundation, which is the logo on my shirt, because many people thought that I work for this gas station, but it's not a gas station. It's not a petrol station. It's an international organization specializing in introducing Islam to non-Muslims and in training Muslim public speakers and presenters. Bridges Foundation's logo speaks for itself, actually. It consists of 5 people holding hands with each other, forming a bridge on a curved line, which is planet Earth. And the head of each one of them is of a different color, representing the continent that he or she is coming from. So our goal is to bridge the gap between people from different backgrounds based on education, educating each other about Islam. Today I plan to give you the same presentation that I gave in Denmark in 2006. But before giving my presentation to you, there are some terms that I will use, and I want to make sure that we are all on the same bandwidth. These terms may mean something to Muslims, but may mean something else to non-Muslims. So today I will say the word Allah frequently, and some people think that Allah is the God of Muslims. I will say the word Islam, and still some people think that maybe Islam is one of the religions which they call the heavenly religions, or the third religion, or a religion founded by someone called Muhammad. We also need to address that. I will quote a lot from a book called the Quran, which some people think that it's a book that is full of violence and verses that instigate Muslims against non-Muslims to fight and kill and stuff like that. We need to talk about the Quran. And the fourth thing is, I will mention the name Muhammad a lot, which people mistakenly think that he's someone who wrote the Quran, or maybe he is the founder of Islam, which is not true. This introduction, or these definitions, it will take me around 10 to 15 minutes maximum, and then I'll go into the topic. So the first thing that I need to address is the word Islam. The word Islam linguistically in the Arabic language comes from the root of the word salama. Most Arabic words have roots, and most of those roots are from 3-letter roots. Few words in Arabic have a 4-letter root, but Islam, like most words in Arabic, comes from a 3-letter root, which is salama. And this is the same root of 3 different words in the Arabic language too. One of them is istislam, which means submission. And the second one is salama, which means purity. And the third one is salam, which means peace. So the word Islam comes from the same root of those 3 words: submission, purity, and peace. Surprisingly, the word Islam idiomatically, the word Islam Islamically, is a combination of those 3 meanings, those 3 words. The word Islam idiomatically means that if any person submits to the will of God and worships God alone, worships God purely, without any association with God, he or she will live in peace and harmony in this life and in the hereafter. Therefore, the word Muslim in the Arabic language doesn't mean literally a follower of Prophet Muhammad. The word Muslim in the Arabic language means literally someone who submits to the will of God and worships God alone, without association with God. Which means that before the birth of Prophet Muhammad, there were Muslims too. I will say the word Allah a lot. And actually, some people think that the word Allah means the God of the Muslims, which is not true. Actually, the word Allah is an Arabic word that means the one true God. So actually, Arab Christians and Arab Jews use the word Allah as well as Muslims to name the deity. This is the word Allah in Arabic. And I know that most of you don't know Arabic language, but still we can play a small game. This is the first page of the Arabic Christian Bible. This word, at-takween, means Genesis. So this is the first paragraph of Genesis in Arabic. Let's play a small game. Who can figure out how many times this word, Allah, exists here in this paragraph? Count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the word Allah exists 6 times in the first paragraph alone of Genesis. 17 times in the whole page. Thousands of times all through the Bible. So when Muslims say there is no God except Allah, it's not only that this should not offend Christians and Jews or people coming from a Christian or a Jewish background, this actually unites us. But Muslims believe that Allah is unique. Muslims believe that He is alone the creator of all that exists. So He's the one who created human beings, the one who created man, so He does not look like any man. He's the one who created animals, He does not look like any animal. He created plants, He doesn't look like any plant. He is unique. There's a verse in the Quran that describes God. It says, there is nothing like unto Him, which means anything that your mind can imagine, He is beyond. I will quote a lot from a book called the Quran. What is the Quran? I know that also probably most of you come from a Christian or a Jewish background, even if people with no faith now, but at least from a Christian background. And Christians have the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Quran simply is the last testament. It is the last revelation of God. The Quran is also the principal source for every Muslim's faith and practice, and it deals with all subjects that concern human beings, including wisdom, doctrine, worship, and law. There are 2 main basic themes for the Quran. The first one is the relationship between God and His creation, and the second one is the relationship between people, one and another of them. And the Quran provides guidelines for a just society, proper human conduct, and equitable economic principles. Muslims do not only believe in the Quran. Muslims believe in all the books of God. Muslims believe in the Torah that was given to Moses, peace be upon him. Muslims believe in the gospel that was given to Prophet Jesus, son of Mary, peace be upon him. And Muslims believe in the Torah and also the Quran, which was given to Muhammad, peace be upon him too, etc., because we also believe that there were other books before these books, like the Psalms of David, like the Scrolls of Abraham. Let me show you what the Quran says about these books. What do you think the Quran will say about the Torah that was given to Moses? The Quran says, "Surely we did send down the Torah to Moses. Therein was guidance and light, by which the prophets who submitted themselves to Allah's will judged the Jews." So the Torah was mentioned in the Quran as a source of guidance and light. Anything about the gospel? The Quran says, "We sent Jesus, son of Mary, confirming the Torah that had come before him, and we gave him the gospel, in which was guidance and light." So the gospel as well, which was given to Jesus, son of Mary, peace be upon him, was mentioned as a source of guidance and light. Actually, this is a verse from the Quran. I'm hiding it now because I don't want you to read it while I'm introducing it. It's a very dear verse to my heart, because it's simply an answer to a question that I used to have in my mind for so many years. For so many years, when I used to see people fighting each other, I used to wonder, why did God create us from different backgrounds and people are fighting each other? Men and women, those who are men don't understand. Whites and blacks, for centuries there were problems between whites and blacks. Arabs today, problems. Pakistanis, problems. Koreans, problems. Wasn't it a better idea that we could have been all from one background instead of people fighting each other? God could have created us all white, speaking Italian and eating pizza. That's it. Or actually, we could have been all Chinese, eating Chinese. This could have been good for me, by the way. But I read the Quran and I found the answer to this question. God Almighty said in the Quran, all mankind. He's not saying all Muslims. So he's talking to each and every one in this room. All mankind, we created you from male and female and made you into nations with an S and tribes with an S, that you may know each other. And I stopped at this point and I thought to myself, imagine that we could have been all from one background, one sex, one color, speaking one language, eating the same food. This life could have been so boring, because there's no chance to get to know each other and discover each other. Of course, many businesses like tourism will go out of business because travel where, see what? It's a boring world. And the rest of the verse says, "Surely the most honored of you in the sight of Allah are the Arabs." I'm sorry, not the Arabs. The Jews. It says, "Surely the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you." Doesn't matter if he's male or female, doesn't matter from which nation or which tribe. If he is more righteous, then he is more honored. Period. To talk about Prophet Muhammad, I need to talk a little bit about the concept of prophethood in Islam, because Muslims believe that there is only one God. Muslims also believe that there's only one humankind, because there's no difference between us. Men are not better than women, whites are not better than blacks, Europeans are not better than Arabs, Arabs are not better than Indians. So if there's only one God and only one humankind, this means that there's only one sender and only one recipient. If there's only one sender and only one recipient, why would anyone think that the same sender, God, will send to the same recipient, the humankind, contradicting messages. To confuse them? Of course not. So Muslims believe that it was never religions with an S. It was always one religion. Not the religion of Muhammad, not the religion of Jesus, not the religion of Moses, but rather the religion of God. Allah in Arabic language. God with a capital G in English, Dieu in French. In Dutch is what? Gold? God. Okay, good. I forgot to tell you in the beginning, by the way. So, God sent one religion to all humankind, with many messengers through time, and with many books. So it's all one religion, with one God, to the same humankind, and many books of the same religion, many messengers of the same religion. If it's only one religion, for everybody, it has to be suitable. What in the world is suitable for everybody? No one offers you tea before he asks you first, do you drink tea? Maybe you don't drink tea. No one offers you coffee before asking you, do you drink coffee? Maybe you don't drink coffee. What is the only thing that people bring you without asking you? Water. Why? What's the difference between water and tea? They are just liquids. Water, no one ever asked you if you ever drink water. It's even a funny question. Because water doesn't have a color. Because water doesn't smell anything. Because water tastes good for all people because it neither salty nor sweet. That's why it's acceptable for all people. So if there's only one religion, and it has to be suitable for all people, it shouldn't be limited, it shouldn't be called after someone, shouldn't be called after a group of people, shouldn't be called after a geographic region, shouldn't be limited. Hinduism is named after Hind, India, a geographic region. Judaism after the tribe of Judas. Christianity after Jesus Christ, human being, a beautiful human being. Buddhism after Buddha. Islam after who? Not named after the Prophet Muhammad. Muslims love Muhammad so much, but they get offended when they are called Muhammadans. Why? Don't they love him? They love him, but they're not Muhammadans. They are Muslims like him, and like Jesus and Moses and Abraham and all of those. I just tried to simplify this. So Muslims believe in all the messages and all the books. Maybe I'm lying to you. And when I turn my back to you, I just believe in Muhammad and the Quran. I told you the Quran is the principal source for every Muslim's faith and practice. We have this verse twice in the Quran. It says, say, we believe in Allah. We believe in Allah. And the revelation given to us, which is the Quran, and the revelation given to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, and the revelation given to Moses and Jesus, and the revelation given to all the prophets from their Lord, we make no difference between one and another of them. And we submit to Allah, which means, and we are Muslims, which means, I cannot be a Muslim if I exclude any one of these. If I exclude Jacob, I'm not Muslim anymore. Cannot be Muslim. I have to accept it all. Accept this religion with all its prophets, all its books. Shouldn't be make difference between one and another of them. Therefore, Prophet Muhammad is not the founder of Islam like some people were told. Muhammad was rather one of the messengers of Islam, the last and final messenger of Islam, a colleague of Jesus and Moses and Abraham, a graduate of the same school from which they graduated, the school of God. His traditions are called the Sunnah, which is the number 2 source of Islamic knowledge and legislation. And his people used to call him the trustworthy and the truthful. Pagan Arabs loved him so much, they called him the trustworthy and the truthful. This is before he became a prophet. After he became a prophet, things changed. opposed him hard. They tried to stop him by all means. They actually tried to kill him several times, and they killed some of his followers. The very first martyr in Islam is not a man at all, but a woman, Lady Sumayya. She was jabbed in her private parts by a spear by one of the biggest Islamophobes, and they tortured him and his followers, and they negotiated with him. They told him, stop preaching what you're preaching. What do you want? Money? We will make you the most rich. Power? We will make you the king of Arabia. What do you want? Women? We will marry you from the most beautiful women. But please, stop preaching this message. And he refused to compromise his freedom of speech. He said, if they put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand to stop preaching this message, I won't stop until the message is conveyed or I die conveying it. He was the most beautiful example for all people because he was not just a prophet. He was also a father, a husband, a merchant, a politician, a negotiator, a teacher, and a warrior. But he taught Muslims how to fight, and he told them that they should not kill innocent people. They should not kill non-combatants, which is another topic that exists in one of my videos. One of my films is called Jihad on Terrorism, which is something that you should really watch. He gave hope to billions of people through his teachings that inspired people a lot. One of his beautiful teachings that have shaken me a lot is when he said, if you are planting a tree and the end of the world came, just go ahead and plant it quickly. And I know that this may not make sense for many of you. Why should people be planting trees at the end of the world? It's not only that we will not eat from it, there are no coming generations even to eat from it. But this is a very important tradition of Prophet Muhammad that explains the system in Islam. In Islam, God will not ask you about your results, but rather about your effort. Sometimes you do effort, but you don't get good results and you're not rewarded. God doesn't care about your results. Even in this life, your boss tells you, come here, show me your numbers, show me your sales, show me the production. God doesn't care about your numbers or your sale or your production. He cares about your effort. Did you do effort or not? And some non-Muslim intellectuals spoke highly about Prophet Muhammad because they were objective when they read his biography. One of them is the French historian Lamartine. Lamartine wrote a book called L'Histoire de la Turquie, which means the history of the Turks. In this book he said, if greatness of purpose, smallness of means, and outstanding results are the three criteria of a human genius, who could dare to compare any great man with Muhammad? Mahatma Gandhi, this man of peace, he said about Prophet Muhammad in an article that he published in Young India, some famous newspaper, I became more than convinced that it was not the sword that won a place for Islam in those days in the scheme of life. It was the rigid simplicity, the utter self-effacement of the Prophet, the scrupulous regard for his pledges, his intense devotion to his friends and followers, his intrepidity, his fearlessness, his absolute trust in God and in his own mission. And the last one is Wolfgang Goethe. Goethe, you know him, is the most famous European poet. He said, he is a prophet and not a poet, and therefore his Quran is to be seen as a divine law, not as a book of a human being made for education or entertainment. Now, let's talk about freedom of speech. When can freedom of speech be unlimited in Islam? Actually, I need to tell you a little bit about the lecture that I gave in Denmark. Usually after my lectures, we distribute the evaluation forms, and by studying these evaluation forms, we found that 92% of the people who attend, they change their position from Islam to a better position. They can become neutral afterward, being haters of Islam. Or they can become supporters of Islam. They can become supporters after being neutral. 7.5% remain as is. Maybe they believe I lie, I beautify Islam. And 0.5% become Muslim. It's not the main aim. I'm not denying that it makes me happy, but it's not my main goal. But when I went to Denmark to give my lecture in a conference closed on Danish journalists, I was hoping 10% only would change their position from Islam to a better position. Because talking to journalists is different from talking to the public. 55% checked this question, yes, in the evaluation form. My respect to Prophet Muhammad increased after the presentation. These are pictures from the conference. Actually, I sent them this invitation to attract them to come. It was a 3D box. On it there was "You are invited" and a bridge. When you open the box, you don't find an invitation. You find a beautiful word, something peaceful on that side that says, "The peoples of the east and the west are the branches of the same tree, and when one looks in the roots of the tree," something beautiful like that. And it's signed by a Danish journalist, a Danish person that no one knows about. No one ever heard his name, Knud Hombo. And we made a website for him, www.knud-hombo.com. On the other side, there's a chocolate. On the chocolate, there's the sticker that says the venue, Marriott Copenhagen, and the date. If you pick up the chocolate to eat it, you find that the invitation is colorful and folded and stuck to the chocolate, the bottom of the chocolate. And in this invitation, everything is there in the event. Among them is my lecture, titled, "When Can Freedom of Speech Be Limitless in Islam?" Of course, at that time, Muslims in the whole world were saying there are limits for freedom of speech. Non-Muslims were saying there are no limits for freedom of speech. So when the Imam coming to address them is saying that it can be limitless, then they have to attend. And thanks God, most of the invitees attended, and it was a successful conference. One of the main obligations on Muslims, one of the main rituals, ways of worship in Islam is to do something called enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. God says in the Quran, "The believers, men and women, are protectors one of another. They enjoin what is good and they forbid what is evil." How can I forbid the evil in a country that doesn't grant me freedom of speech? I will find myself in jail. I can lose my life. Ask me about that. So when God tells me to enjoy the good and forbid the evil, then by default Islam gives the freedom of speech. In the life of Prophet Muhammad, there are many examples of freedom of speech. He changed the location of the army twice, not once, after an argument with one of his soldiers. And look at the soldier, how he talked to the Prophet. He told him, "Are we here in this position by revelation, which means God told you to place us here? Or is it about war and consultation and giving my opinion?" The Prophet said, "No, it's open for opinion. Tell me, what do you think?" When the man saw that it's not a revelation from God and that he is free to talk and give his opinion, he said, "I think we are here in the wrong place." The Prophet said, "What do you think then?" He said, "We should be in front of the wells so that we can have water sources and we deprive them from the wells." The army of the enemy. The Prophet said, "That's a good idea." This shows that there was freedom of speech with the Prophet. Also, in his house, there was a marital dispute, like the disputes that happen between husbands and wives. So he told his wife, Aisha, who would you like us to consult and bring someone to judge between us? Would you like me to invite your father to judge? She said, yeah, my father is fine. He sent to her father came. And then when he came, the Prophet looked at Aisha and said, would you like to speak and tell him what happened, or would you like me to tell him what happened? She said, no, you tell him what happened, but don't say except the truth. This shows also, of course, this is too much to be said to the Prophet, who was called the trustworthy. Of course, her father jumped from his chair, wanted to punish her, and the Prophet here interceded, and he prevented him from touching. He said, no, Abu Bakr, we did not invite you for that, and this is not what we want from you. So Abu Bakr left the house angrily, and the Prophet looked at Aisha and said, see, I protected you from the man. But this shows that there was a big space for freedom of speech in the Muslim society with the Prophet himself. Let me show that there was a big space for freedom of speech with God himself. In the Quran, it says that God announced to the angels that he chose the human being to be the trustee on earth. And the angel's reaction was telling him, will you place therein someone who will shed the blood and spread mischief on the earth while we are glorifying you and worshipping you? What did God do to the angels? He punished them because they spoke and expressed themselves? No. He told them, okay, you think that's not right? Show me. Tell me all the names. They couldn't. They said, glory be unto you. We only know what you taught us. He said, Adam, tell them all the names. So Adam told them all the names and proved to them that this creature is not like any creature. This is a creature that has superiority in knowledge, and he deserves to be the trustee on earth. But God did not punish the angels. This is my point here. God just proved to them that he is right. Abraham told God, my Lord, show me how you give life to the dead. God said, don't you believe yet? He said, no, I believe. It's just to strengthen my faith. So God did not punish Abraham for expressing himself. God said, okay, Abraham needs an experiment. Take an experiment. Bring 4 birds, cut them into pieces, scatter them on the mountains, call them back. Your birds will come to you walking. Birds don't come walking, birds come flying. But Abraham was told before his lecture what will be the result of before his experiment, what will be the result exactly of this. But the point here is God did not punish Abraham for expressing himself. Moses said, my Lord, show me yourself. I want to look upon you. God said, you cannot see me, but look at the mountain. If it stands still in its place, then you shall see me. And then God revealed himself to the mountain collapsed, and Moses fainted. But he did not punish Moses for expressing himself. All what I have shown you proves that there's a big space for freedom of speech in Islam. But none of that says that it is limitless. What says that it's limitless? Few traditions of Prophet Muhammad. He said, Prophet Muhammad said, if the time comes that you see my nation afraid of telling a tyrant that he is a tyrant, then there is no hope for them. What do tyrants do? Tyrants kill. And the Prophet is saying, if you're afraid of telling the tyrant that he's a tyrant in his face, there's no hope for you. Which means no limits. Go to the end, even if it costs you your life. You will die one day. Die with dignity instead of getting run over by a car. He also said the best of martyrs is the one who was killed by a tyrant for saying the truth and criticizing him in his presence. So he's encouraging people to speak the truth in the presence of tyrants, even if they can get killed. Because this is called reform. Societies can get reformed like that, when people oppose tyrants and say the truth. He also said the best form of jihad is a word of truth in the presence of a tyrant. All this proves that it has no limits when it is against a tyrant, when it is in the direction of a tyrant. And then I showed them who is Knut Holmboe, the man whose name was on the invitation. Knut Holmboe is actually the first convert to Islam in Denmark. When I went preparing for my conference, I started to dig and see the roots of Islam in Denmark, and I found that this man is the first convert to Islam in Denmark. He converted around 100 years ago. And guess what was his profession? He was a journalist. Like them. How did he die? A martyr of freedom of speech. He was killed by Mussolini for refusing his offer. Actually, who among you saw the film Omar al-Mukhtar, The Lion of the Desert? Okay, this film is by Anthony Quinn. It's about Omar al-Mukhtar, the leader of the Libyan resistance against the fascists, the Italian occupiers of Libya. At the end of the film, when Anthony Quinn was hung actually, and his glasses fell on the floor, who went and grabbed the glasses? A boy. What was his name? Ali Knut Holmboe. He was not that young. He was 29 years old, and he's a Danish journalist. He was like the right hand of Omar al-Mukhtar. He joined the Libyan resistance. This man, actually what happened is that when he became Muslim, he went to Morocco and he wanted to go driving to Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca. So he took his Chevrolet and he drove in that route in the northern desert, and he wrote a beautiful book called Brenner, or The Deserts Are Burning, where he wrote beautiful, actually amazing adventures. I think this book is even more interesting than Harry Potter. It's really like that, something amazing. And 70% of the book was in Libya, where he interacted with the Libyan resistance and with the Italians. Here, this is him with his Chevrolet, and this guide is a Libyan boy called Muhammad. At a certain part of the journey, he was the guide, and this Muhammad, by the way, died 4 years ago in the age of 85. And this is an American called Starbucks, who was with him during his journey, but he died and they buried him during the journey. Him and Muhammad. Here he wrote, the Free Arabs of Cyrenaica. Those are the resistance. He said, I used to witness 30 executions in Bani Ghazi every single day, taking these pictures with his camera. He said this man was shot because he was standing in a prohibited area. Another Arab victim. This is one of the two pictures that caused his death. Those are two Italian prisoners taken prisoners in the imprisonment camps of Omar al-Mukhtar. Mussolini did not want the Italian people to know that Italians are taken prisoners in Libya too. He sent him a German agent called Hans Joachim with a blank check. He said, write any amount of money, but don't publish what you have. And he refused. And this is the imprisonment camps, and those are other two Italian prisoners. And he was killed as a martyr of freedom of speech at the age of 29. The year after, actually, a group of Danish journalists came visiting us in Bridges Foundation in Egypt, in our office. That was our office in Egypt before we closed. And this is his book in Arabic, in Danish, and we even published it in English also on the internet. liberty itself is important in Islam. God described Prophet Muhammad in the Quran as the liberator. God describes him saying he relieves them from their burdens and from the iron collars that were on them, from the iron chains that are on them. So the Prophet was mentioned in the Quran as a liberator. The very first generation of Muslims saw themselves as liberators, not as people who came to kill others. There was a famous dialogue between a famous companion of Prophet Muhammad, who was a very simple Bedouin, by the way, Rib'i ibn Amir, and between Rustum, the head of the Persian army, who asked him, "Who are you? What brought you from Arabia? You poor guys. We are Persia, a civilization of 2,000 years. And he told him, we came to liberate people and bring them out from the worship of creatures to the worship of the creator of creatures, and from the oppression of religions to the justice of Islam. What I focus on is how he perceived himself as someone who wants to liberate people. There was an incident in which the son of the ruler of Egypt at the time of Caliph Umar ibn Khattab, the ruler of Egypt was a great companion of Prophet Muhammad called Amr ibn al-As. His son was racing against some Egyptian Christians, horse race. And one of them won, and there was a fight, and he beat up one of them. So the Christian Egyptian took his mule and traveled all the way to Medina in Arabia. It took him like 2 months to file a claim against that boy. This in itself shows me that non-Muslims under the rule of Umar ibn Khattab had confidence, trusted that there is justice there. So he went and he filed a claim. Umar ibn Khattab brought both the ruler of Egypt and his son. His son confessed, said, yeah, I lost my mind, I lost my temper, and I beat him up. Umar said, okay, then take your revenge. He gave his wooden stick to the Egyptian, told him, take your revenge from him. He beat up the boy, and then he told him, beat up his father, the ruler of Egypt. The Christian said, I took my revenge. He said, he could have never done that to you without the support of his father. And then he looked at the father and said, tell me, Amr, when did we start enslaving free people? Literally in Arabic language he said, tell me, Amr, when did we start enslaving people who were born free? Which means that they looked at themselves as people coming to liberate the slaves, not to enslave. To liberate non-Muslims, not kill non-Muslims. This is how they looked at themselves. In Islam, freedom equals life. Killing is a major sin in Islam. You're not allowed to kill in Islam, except in war or accidentally, in an accident, like in a car accident. If you kill someone in a car accident or accidentally, you need to seek atonement from God. You need to seek forgiveness. You cannot seek forgiveness except when you do something which is free a slave. Now there is no slaves, so we have other options like fasting 60 consecutive days and paying the blood money, but at that time was freeing a slave. Which means that if you took life from someone by accident, you have to give life to someone dead. How? By giving freedom to someone deprived from freedom. So in Islam, freedom equals life. That's what God said in the Quran. Never should a believer kill another believer except by mistake. If anyone kills a believer by mistake, he must free a Muslim slave and pay compensation to the victim's relatives. Let's fight with each other now. What's coming next, I'm not expecting that you agree with it all. But it's a matter of perspective. It's about different perspective. I can have different perspective from you. The issue is liberties of people will collide. What I can see as my freedom to practice is something that can hurt you. We need someone to put the boundaries for this freedom. We said that Islam says it is unlimited when it's against a tyrant, but otherwise there should be boundaries for our freedoms in order not to collide. The issue is, who will put the boundaries? What about the ruler? If the ruler puts the boundaries, then he becomes a dictator. What about democracy? By democracy, we put the boundaries. Actually, the democratic way is accepted in Islam, that the majority's opinion is accepted, except when it is about freedom and liberties. Because that way, you are allowing the majority to oppress the minority. Let me give you an example. In Switzerland, if you're a Jew, you can have a tower for your synagogue. If you're a Christian, you can have a tower for your church. If you're a Hindu, you can have a tower for your temple. If you're a Muslim, you cannot have a minaret for your mosque. Why? By democracy. By democracy, the majority oppressed a minority. So here, when it comes to freedom and liberties, we need someone who knows more than us, more about the majority and the minority and the men and the women and the whites and the blacks and everybody, to give them the freedom. Let me show you even, I have here, what about unleashing freedoms? Let people do whatever they want. In this case, people will be enslaved to their own whims and desires. So actually, Muslims found that the best thing is something. I'll show you something that happened through democracy. The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, which is listing the rights of human beings, not allowing any government or any dictator to violate them, allowed the right of marriage. In article number 16, it says, men and women of full age, without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion, have the right to marry and to found a family. So by this declaration, no government can ban marriage, because marriage is a human right. What about divorce? What if someone mischose his or her partner? Do they have the right to dissolve the marriage? Don't you think it's a human right? It's a human right. But it's not stated, not listed in the list of the human rights of the United Nations Declaration until today. Why? 70% of the customers of the United Nations who pay the salaries of the United Nations do not have marriage in the religion. In Christianity, there is no marriage. Do not have divorce in the religion. So in Christianity, there is no divorce in the religion. The United Nations compromised. God doesn't compromise. God allowed the right to dissolve the marriage for men and for women, because it's a human right. Dissolving the marriage is discouraged, but it's a human right. What if someone mischoses his partner or her partner? God says in the Quran, divorce is allowed twice. After that, either men retain women on reasonable terms or release them with kindness, and it is not lawful for men to take back from your wives any of your dowry which you have given them, except when both parties fear that they would be unable to keep the limits ordained by Allah. Then if you fear that they would not be able to keep the limits ordained by Allah, then there is no sin on either of them if she gives back the dowry or part of it for her khul', which means that if the man divorces, he doesn't have the right to take any of his marriage gifts. But if she asks for divorce, then she has to give him back his dowry or a part of it as they agree with each other. So here I find that God himself has put for us the limits and the boundaries of freedom. For example, in one of the verses, it says, "Believers, let not some men among you laugh at others, who may after all be better than them. Nor let some women laugh at others, who may after all be better than them. Nor defame, nor be sarcastic to each other, nor call each other by offensive nicknames. Believers, avoid making too many assumptions. Some assumptions are sinful. Do not spy on one another, or speak ill of people behind their backs. Would any of you like to eat the flesh of your dead brother? No, you would hate it." So God here is giving the example of backbiting someone, speaking ill about someone in his back, like you're eating his own flesh when he's dead. God is ever relenting, most merciful. So this is just one of the things that where God is putting the boundaries of freedoms here. Like that, I think we finished our presentation, and I can take from you any question. So I'm opening the floor for questions. Before that, let me quickly tell you, as I told you, I'm a filmmaker. I made 3 films. These 3 films now are in one box. It's called The Fog is Lifting series of documentaries, 4.5 hours about Islam. The first one is called Islam in Brief, which is in 31 languages today, including Hebrew. The second one is called Jihad on Terrorism, which is today in 17 languages, also including Hebrew. And the third one is called Islam in Women, which was launched recently, one week ago, in London. The 3 of them are in a box. We sell it for about 12 euros. It's free for you actually, and free especially for faculty staff. But you have to drop an email to the student union, the UT student union, and they will be sending you your free box. Okay? Now, any question? That was from the DVDs, of course, huh? Okay. Yes?
Some common questions like, I have a very big doubt, who created the God? God created man or man created God?
What do you think? Did you remember when you created God?
Man created God, that's my thinking.
That's your thinking?
Can you solve
That's your thinking. Actually, I believe. Okay, tell me, what are you studying here or
working in the company.
working in a company? Okay, good. In the field maybe of finance or something? Accounting?
Okay, I'm a designer.
A designer, okay. The issue is, since you're a designer, so of course you believe in that I cannot tell you that this came without a design. Someone must have designed it. I can't tell you that by chance the plastic and the silicon came by chance to become an apple. Okay? I'll give you, because I believe, I'm an engineer, electronics engineer, by the way, and I believe so much in what we call the theory of probabilities. If you put 12 marbles in a bag, after numbering them, marble number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, until 12, put them in a bag, close your eyes, shake the bag well, put your hand inside and pull out marble number 1. You know what is the probability of doing that? 1 out of 12. Return it back and pull out marble number 2. The probability is 1 of 12. You know what is the probability of pulling out marble number 1 in the first time and number 2 in the second time? It's 1 out of 144. You need to try 144 times to pull number 1 and the number 2. You know what is the chance of pulling the 12 marbles in sequence? It is 1 out of 379 million times. You need to try 379 million times to pull 12 marbles by chance in sequence. If pulling 12 marbles in sequence is that impossible, do you think this universe, with all the numeration, the synchronization, will come by chance? I believe not. It cannot. That's what I believe. Oh, thank you. Any other question? Okay, you first.
You were talking about the compatibility of other religions like Christianity to Islam, which I found very interesting.
Yeah.
How is it from Islam to atheists, people who consciously do not believe in God?
I told you that as Muslims we believe that there was always one religion, by the way, okay? And it's not Christianity, and it's not Judaism. It was Islam, and it's not named after Prophet Muhammad. Even before the birth of Prophet Muhammad, by thousands and thousands of years, people were calling themselves Muslims, according to the Quran and according to our belief, because it means submitting to God, doesn't mean following someone, okay? People of no faith, there is one thing in common between us and them, which is reason. The faculty of reason. And God is challenging them in the Quran, telling them to utilize their intellect and is giving them actually things that are challenging their intellect. I was giving an interview now to the newspaper of the university, and I told her that Islam is the only religion in the world which tell its followers to leave it if they find the truth somewhere else. Very open, very objectively. When the Prophet was debating against Christians, before the debate, he received this verse telling him, say, which means say to them, if God has a son, I'll be the first one to worship him, which means prove it. If you prove it to me, I'm open to change my religion. See, and we have several examples like that. So the issue is, I am open to become an atheist, by the way, if you prove it to me. But the issue is, do you also have this courage to change your position if you see the truth? This is the issue. And if so, we have a lot of things to show you, actually. Okay? But thank you for the question. Thank you for your frankness. Okay.
Well, you obviously have studied Islam a lot, but how do you, and not everybody can do that all the time, how do you prevent somebody who would assume your position and who would have the intention of limiting, for instance, freedom of speech in your case? How would you make sure that this somebody could not do that while he tells that he bases this on this major law, this bigger thing?
The Islam, you mean? Very good. Actually, the same thing I face when I talk about any topic. I talk about jihad, I talk about terrorism, I talk about these things, and I speak from the Quran and Sunnah also, and even extremists talk from the Quran and Sunnah too. The issue is debate. I love debates, and I debated. Actually, in this documentary, there is an interview with Adam Gadan, who was actually the spokesman of Al-Qaeda. Of course, we didn't interview him ourselves, but the video is on the internet. So the issue is, bring both people in front of each other and let them debate. Let me prove to people that their understanding is a wrong understanding. That's it. So I believe, as I told you, that freedom of speech should be limitless when it's against a tyrant. There are people in my country that believe, no, you don't even have the right to say to a tyrant that he's a tyrant. You should accept his tyranny. And they base this on Islam too, which is tarnishing the image of Islam. But here, when we debate, I have a debate after the January 25th revolution, which I took part, or I have the honor to be a part of this revolution, by the way, myself. And I debated 2 months after the revolution in a mosque in a village in Egypt. It was attended by hundreds of people against one of those people who say that it was wrong to go against Mubarak and speak against peacefully, even wrong. So the right thing is confrontation and debate. That's what I believe in. As long as it's in a friendly atmosphere. I like to debate against people. I try to convince you, you try to convince me. If none of us convince each other, we go and eat something together and then go home. But not fight. Okay?
You would need somebody to provide that platform in the first place.
Definitely. There are, but the issue is extremists do not go for debates because they know that they are not only wrong, they don't have a base And most of them are just an infiltration for Islam. Most of them, they work and they are paid by the tyrants, either to tarnish the image of Islam or to hijack the minds of people. We found that lately, actually. Sir.
So, if I understand correctly, you would say that the boundaries of freedom of speech should be put by God.
Yes.
And, well, in my ears, that would sound very quickly as in the boundaries of freedom of speech are then dictated by, for example, holy books, by the teachings of holy books.
The guidelines. God doesn't give us details, but give us guidelines. And these guidelines from there, we can put our details. But for example, I have a presentation that I gave in Brussels University, and you can find it on YouTube. It is called Quran, the Discovery of Freedom. In this presentation, I'm comparing between the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights that was declared by the General Assembly of the United Nations in the year 1948, and between the Quran, not as the Book of God, but as a Declaration of Human Rights that was declared 1,400 years before it. And I proved to people that every single human right that is stated in the United Nations Declaration exists in the Quran. And then I proved to them that there are several human rights in the Quran that do not exist until today in the United Nations Declaration. Like I showed you, the right to divorce is not there. The right to inherit is not there. Why? This is the issue. So the issue is, the United Nations Declaration, I'm not speaking against it, it's a beautiful document, but it's not perfect. Why? Because the human being is not perfect. The human being can be beautiful, so it's beautiful, but not perfect. God is perfect. So when it comes to the freedoms of people and the liberties of people that can collide and hurt each other, He puts the boundaries for us. No problem with that. Guidelines again, as I told you, not with details. Details, we can detail it according to the difference of time, difference from one place to the other. Still, the culture itself can be accepted to a limit.
And my question would be more to the books again, is that who decides which books are guidelines?
No. As a Muslim, and in a country of, I'm not telling you here in Netherlands, when you are a majority of like 97% of non-Muslims to take the Quran or the Sharia and apply it. I'm not telling you that. I'm just showing you what we have in order to have a better understanding of us and a better understanding of your colleagues. But I'm not asking you. But in my country, for example, if we decide to apply that, it's our own right to apply it. There shouldn't be a conspiracy removing us from office after reaching the office by democratic means. You understand me? So the issue is, do we have the right to apply what we believe or not? This is the issue. The lady there, she was raising her hand.
Yeah, you talk about Islam and that the Quran is the last revelation.
Yes.
And it tells that all other books, all other religious books are from the one God. And I can hear from your presentation that you know a lot about the Quran, but I was wondering if you also read the Gospel and the Torah and the other books. If you studied those as well.
I studied them. I even have, I studied comparative religions, and I have some videos on the internet discussing them too, by the way. Yes, I did. I actually was raised in a Catholic school for 12 years. I was raised among Catholics in a Catholic school, and we had a church in our school in Egypt. Yes, sir.
Clearly, freedom of speech is very important. Freedom of religion as well. For me, it's very, very important. My question is, why are we so distracted? Why do we see these differences when clearly you say one team of believers, Torah, Christianity, Islam, and it goes very back. I'm myself talking also for the Christian church, but also try to understand the Quran. And but I don't know if it's fully correct, but what I heard is that Muhammad sent his people to East Africa to a Christian ruler
Are you Ethiopian? Yeah. Actually, yes. Prophet Muhammad sent the very first believers who believed in the Quran to your country, and he said, go there because they have a king who is just and no one is wronged under his rule. Not because he was Christian, because he was just. Because the Roman Byzantines were also Christians, but they were unjust. He didn't send anyone there. Because that's even what, this shows even that Prophet Muhammad was a strategic planner. You know what he did? He split his group, because at that time he was struggling a lot in Mecca, and they were put under embargo for 3 years. And for 3 years, the Prophet and his companions saw food and they couldn't eat it because people are not selling food to them, not buying anything from them, boycott. They had to eat grass until their feces looked like those of camels, because they were eating grass like camels and sheep. So he said, I split my group. I will send a group somewhere in a different continent in Africa under the rule of a king who is not a tyrant, not an oppressor. So if we here perish, Islam will continue there. If we do not, they can come and join us later, and that's what happened. The issue is, our minds are not the same. My mind is not like your mind. So God can send us revelations. I can understand it in a way, you can understand it in a different way. From here comes the differences. And this is good. Differences are not bad. In one hand, you don't have two similar fingers. In one hand, you don't have two similar fingers. And because of this difference, you can do a lot of things with it. Had you had 5 exactly similar fingers, you could have done nothing with it, by the way. But the issue is, how can we deal with our differences and make it a strength, not a weakness? This is what I believe. The problem, see, I showed you a verse in the Quran where God is addressing our differences, saying, O mankind, not all Muslims, I created you from male and female and made you into nations and tribes that you may know each other, not fight each other. So war is man-made. But God created us from different backgrounds in order to get to know each other and discover each other. So the blame is on us, not on God. And not on religions also, by the way. But on our understanding for the religions, including Islam. Okay? Okay, him first and then you.
I've been lucky enough to grow up with Muslims, and one of the things to me that I've seen both the very good side and also the side that's portrayed to us in the media, the very bad side. And the thing is that recently, more and more young Muslims, especially young Muslims, are becoming more extreme.
Radicalized.
Yeah, and lately, and especially lately, since because I know a lot of Muslims, especially from a very young age, and one of the things I was thinking was that how is it that Muslims who are growing up in the civil society, for example, from Ireland and the UK, who have grown up in civil society, how is it that we stay together, go to school together? How is it people like that can become more and more extreme?
Good. You said lately. Can you tell me lately during the past few months?
As in that when they reach, say, example, 18.
No, I mean, you said lately, radicalization has been spreading, like for example, during the past 2 years? Okay. Actually, we deal with this in our film Jihad on Terrorism. I encourage you to watch Jihad on Terrorism. There are 10 speakers. 5 of them are Muslims and 5 are non-Muslims. 2 of them are Jews. One of them is a Prize Peace Laureate, a Nobel Prize Peace Laureate. And all of them are discussing the ground root of terrorism. Politicians have been trying hard to convince us that the root cause of terrorism is actually 2 things: poverty and ignorance, which is not true. Number 1 in Al-Qaeda was a multi-millionaire. Number 2 in Al-Qaeda, the head of Al-Qaeda today, has 2 PhDs. It's neither poverty nor, by the way, we even, Dr. Robert Pape of Chicago University, a political scientist, he traced all these suicide bombings during the past 20 years. He found that 62% of the people who participated in operations like blowing themselves up were 62% were upper middle class, not poor. Actually, the poorer the person, the more he wants to live. Because there are people depending on him to put the food on the table. His mother, his sisters. It's something else. It's oppression. We have to stop oppression. We have to remove oppression, which is radicalizing people. The best medium for ISIS to recruit is where people go and shell and Bashar kills people and then they go to recruit the families of the victims. Stop oppression, radicalization will stop automatically. Of course, they will. Actually, if I look at ISIS, I see that ISIS is doing a marvelous job when it comes to media. Oh my God! When I see their videos, it's very highly sophisticated. So yes, of course, we have to understand that evil is also using tools that if we consider ourselves righteous people, if we are not using these tools, we should be blaming ourselves. That's it. Sir.
Specified in a holy book or things or is it right for this today? Or
is it right to what?
The dress code, like the man has to wear a beard or wear a cap or so. So is it right to follow it in this modern society also?
Yeah, we believe, by the way, men don't have to wear a cap or anything in Islam. We have a dress code for men and a dress code for women. It is mentioned in the Quran, and we believe that the believers who believe in Islam, which means they submit to the will of God, they put their trust in God, that He knows better for us. For example, I have a Toyota. When something goes wrong with this car, Toyota is the best company to fix it. Why? Because they made it. So they know every little tiny part in it. They know that when they hear this sound, and this part should be changed. Same thing. It's not for you, it's for Muslims who believe in Islam and believe in the Quran and they put their trust in God, so they follow Him in any society. If your neighbor in class is having a beard, will this bother you much?
It doesn't bother me much. But
Good.
what I feel is, kind of dress or whatever it's displayed, maybe it will be good, suitable to a particular geographical location or geographical condition. But now when you're going to different parts of the world where the same kind of climate or geographic conditions is not there, is it still required to?
Yes, of course, it is still required, and as Muslims, you can ask actually all the ladies here during the break who is beating them up every day to wear like that. By the way, you need to understand that even some Muslim women or girls, when they choose to wear the hijab, it happens a lot that the families and the parents tell them, not now, wait for 2 more years. That's what happens at some time, which is wrong. But the issue is, it's not like it was portrayed for you guys. God told men to wear like that, told women to wear like that, and then they are applying this. Does it bother you, for example, if you are in a European country and your colleague in the class is having a headscarf covering her hair? Do you need anything from her hair?
Idealizes you yourself as a Muslim.
Yes, good, yeah. It's a part of telling you that I am proud to be a Muslim. Is that also a problem for you? Good, oh, that's not. No problem. So. Definitely.
So, do you think that's something, let's say, for example, the Danish cartoon writers, do you think that is the issue of people disagreeing on how to fill in the details of freedom of speech, or people disagreeing on what the guidelines should be
Number one, the cartoon crisis happened in Denmark. The law in Denmark allows it, so it's legal. But the issue is, we say that people should be more sensitive because the same cartoonist, you know what really triggered the issue in Denmark? It's not the cartoon, it is the double standard. The same cartoonist who depicted Prophet Muhammad with a bomb-shaped turban, if you remember, had he depicted a Jewish rabbi with a bomb-shaped hat, the same prime minister who is now heading the NATO could have not said what he said. He could have not said, this is freedom of speech. He could have said, at that time, this is anti-Semitism and it's not tolerated in Denmark. This is what triggered it. It's not, by the way, even Charlie Hebdo, it's been depicting the Prophet in nasty images since 12 years. Muslims never even, they always ignored it. But what happened, you need to understand what happened. Because ISIS said, or the guys who did that, they said, we took revenge for the Prophet. That's not true. The last cartoon was about the ISIS with a fighter, the one who slaughters people, with his face covered, slaughtering a cartoon that is a personality in the cartoon that they say it is Prophet Muhammad, and he's telling him, I am the Prophet of Islam. He's telling him, no, you're an apostate, you have to be killed. So actually, if you think about the concept itself of this depiction, it was actually defending the Prophet. It was defending Islam, saying that Islam and the Prophet has nothing to do with ISIS. Now they moved and now they killed the cartoonists. And they said, we defended the Prophet. Excuse me, you are taking revenge for ISIS, not for the Prophet. You understand me here? So these are the issues that even Muslims themselves should not be deceived with. Okay? So of course, what the cartoonists were doing is wrong, is nasty, but what we need to do in this case is what? Just ignore them. He dies. At the time of Prophet Muhammad, there was one of his companions called Salama ibn al-Aqwa, who was described like he alone can chase an army, which means he was so strong. In a place called Al-Hudaybiyah, where Prophet Muhammad signed a peace treaty with the enemy. This man went and rested under a tree. And from the other side of the tree came 4 people from the enemy, from the pagans, and they hung their weapons on the tree, and they rested on the other side of the tree, and they started to provoke him by calling Prophet Muhammad bad names, insulting the Prophet. You know what he did to them? He changed the tree. He went and rested under another tree. Why? That's it. It's about law and order. Islam is about law and order. No one in Islam can go and take action and even apply the law and be a vigilante. It's not allowed in Islam at all. That's not allowed. So those cartoonists, what they did is wrong. I hate what they did. I even hate them, by the way, because they are evil people who are trying to bully a minority. They should not bully a weak minority by doing that. But the issue is, I hate also those who kill them. They don't have the right to kill. That's it. Any other question? Yes.
We know in the Middle East there is no freedom of speech. We feel here as Muslims there is negative impact. What should be done to improve freedom of speech, especially in Middle East, in Muslim world?
In Muslim world, there is no freedom of speech. Ask me about that. These are people, you cannot. You have to remove these tyrants. We have to remove these tyrants first. And we were about to do that, and then a conspiracy happened, and the Arab Spring died. It's still resisting, but it nearly died. But the tyrants should be removed. Because they, even those among them who claim to be applying the Sharia, they are selectively applying the Sharia, but they're not really applying it. Selectively application.
What would you say about Saudi Arabian blogger who was sentenced by a self-proclaimed
I'm not sure what he did, and at the end I was just now giving an example. I don't like to mention names of countries or organizations, but the issue is I was speaking about people who claim to be applying the Sharia, but actually they are selectively applying it. You mentioned the country. Selective application. They don't really apply it all. Okay, sir.
Do you think it should be allowed to criticize and display the Prophet Muhammad?
It should be allowed to criticize the Prophet, yes, but not display him. Why display him? You can tell me, I don't like what he did. Why did he fight and lead an army? He should be a man of peace. And then I explain to you like that. You understand me? So in a friendly atmosphere, yes, but not in a non-friendly, in a hostile atmosphere. The world doesn't need that now. If we can discuss things but respectfully, this will be much better. That's what I believe.
I agree with you, but don't you think that the disclaimer of Prophet Muhammad should be a part of freedom of speech?
According to Islam, in Islamic countries, it is not allowed. But in your countries, you are allowed to do that, and we have nothing to do except complaining and saying, guys, this is actually something that goes against us. And if we can lobby with politicians and issue a law to protect us from that, like for example the Jews, they protected themselves, and no one can just discuss the number 6 million. You cannot discuss it. Understand me? You cannot say, I believe they were like 5 million. You cannot say that. Why? There's a law that prohibits this. If we can lobby with politicians and they can issue a law to protect us, fine. But if not, we don't have the right to act violently. I have all the right to act and disagree with you legally according to the law of the country, not my law. That's what I believe.
Thank you for your presentation. Then there were a couple of solutions about the other arguments and tourism, and I will other understanding. I have two questions now. Why is that idea so spread rather than the ideal, the little understanding that you mentioned in the presentation? First one. And the second question is, what is our role? What shall we do after we attend this?
Okay. Number one, Dr. Robert Pape, the head of the Political Science Department of Chicago University, in his book, Dying to Win, he wrote about his research about suicide bombings. And he traced every single operation, people blowing themselves up. Number one, he found that most of the people who did that were not Muslims. They were Hindus from Sri Lanka, from an organization called the Tamil Tigers. And the number of operations that they held in 20 years equals the number of operations held by Hamas, Jihad al-Islami, and Al-Qaeda altogether. So it's not Islam. And it's not Hinduism too. But it's not about religion. He said from all religions, people practice this. Even among atheists and among Christians in Lebanon also. But he found that when he went to the Muslim world, he found that if there are foreign troops in a country, whether they are occupiers or invited by the government, but looked at as occupiers by some organizations or some people, the probability of having someone blowing himself up increases 11 times. In countries where there are no foreign troops, 1 out of every 34 million would blow himself up. In a country that have foreign troops, 1 out of 3 million will blow himself up. So it's all about oppression and about how people feel. When you oppress people and they have no way to speak even and say this is oppression, and if they speak they are flogged or killed or jailed, they will blow themselves up. They will go crazy actually and do crazy things. I'm telling you. This is one. Two, after this presentation, we should build on that. Becoming more friendly, spreading the truth, and I'm not expecting, I didn't even want to convince you, by the way, with everything I told you at all. I just wanted you to have more understanding. Not to look at me or on my fellow Muslims like weird people who have weird stuff in their religion. That's not true. That's not true. Many of the things that are exaggerated in the media are not true. What I want you to do actually is to take these films. I'll be sending a box to the Student Union within 2 weeks, actually, because the ones that I have now are all in Dutch, by the way, but there's a problem with the German and the French languages, and we are fixing them right now. And we are printing again in Belgium, and I'll send it to you. If there's no problem for you to take it with a problem in the German language, I will send you the box, by the way. No problem. So the issue is, I want you to take these presentations, watch it, send us your questions, spread it. I believe that ignorance is the enemy. The problem with ignorance is that people do not want to admit that they are ignorant in order to learn, thinking that ignorance is an insult. Ignorance is not lack of intelligence at all, it's lack of information. I have no problem admitting that I'm the most ignorant person in this room about Buddhism. There's no problem with that. When I admit my ignorance about Buddhism, I learn about Buddhism. So I believe that we should spread education, should educate each other. That's why, by the way, I forgot to tell you that the campaign of sending these boxes to non-Muslim professors and teachers especially is called Don't Hate, Educate. We are launching this now. Okay, thank you.